Once you have set your game design, that is set in stone. You cannot change it. It's Diet Coke, and he keeps going and getting Diet Coke. They have to have the ownership of the game. They need to feel like it is their game, which they are making it. QA guys tend to be gamers all the time. I mean, I haven't seen sunrise for ages now, so it's already mid-afternoon.
What's up, gamers? The iXie Factor is back with another interesting episode for you. In today's podcast, we'll be talking about the game production lifecycle. So to take us through this, to give us an overview about this and all things interesting about this, we have our in-house gaming expert, Gautam, with us. Gautam comes with about 20 plus years of experience in the industry and his expertise into game production and game design. Great to have you here, Gautam. How have you been?
Thanks, man. Doing good. As good as Bangalore traffic lets me be, but yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. So for those, Gautam, for those interested in a career in game development, right? Can you walk us through an overview of the production lifecycle?
So if you look at game development as a whole, it might be very overwhelming. So you can break it down into stages. You can keep it in pre-production, production and post-production to keep it very simple. So in pre-production, you come up with the game design document, the game mechanics, you create a MVP, which is a minimum viable product. You come up with a technical design document. So all these things are like the foundation for the production cycle. So the reason why you create an MVP is because sometimes the design looks good on paper, but until you test it out, until you make the game, you won't have that much knowledge or that much information of whether the game is actually fun or not. So that's why you create an MVP with some placeholder assets, and you see if the game mechanics which are designed on paper actually works in the game.
So this, what you described, is a pretty lengthy process, isn't it? So ideally, what starts off, the game design process? What starts it off?
So when you go into game design, it just can't be ad hoc. There are so many things which need to be researched while coming up with a game design. First thing is like, no matter what game you're designing, the chances are like that game is already been made. So you need to research and see like, is a similar game already in the market? Who developed it? What is the downloads? What is the revenue? Is it a successful game? If it's not successful, why is it not successful? So it actually helps if a similar game is already there, because then you look at the comments and all the feedback, and then you can see like, what do people not like in this game? What are they wanting from that game more? So you can tune your design knowing what people want and help you with the game design process. And then you look at your competitors, whether it's direct or indirect. So you look at all these things and then you come up with your game design.
Got it. So what you described now, it seems like, these are, quite an amount of research goes into this. And would you describe these as challenges, or are there additional challenges that you encounter as you start?
I wouldn't say it's challenging, but I would say it's a requirement that you have to go through. It's a process. I mean, there is always risk and challenges in anything.
Yeah.
So the thing is like, if you're not doing research, if you're going with a silo mindset, you're just looking in one direction and saying like, no, my game will be successful, and you're not looking at the competition, you're not looking at the market, you're not looking at the audience. So that would affect you because you are not looking outside the box. You're just going in one track mind saying that my game will be fun. But without research, you will not know until it's too late. So once the design is done, later on, once the production starts, you can't change the design midway. So you need to do all your research beforehand to make sure that the game is fun and the game will be viable for the players and for your target audience.
So have you encountered a situation where there's been, you've had to change midway? I mean, not entirely, but have you encountered any situations like that?
I haven't encountered personally, but that's something which you should avoid.
Okay.
Once the game design is set, so in pre-production stage, once you have set your game design, that is set in stone. You cannot change it unless you later do the MVP and then say that the mechanics are not fun.
Okay.
Only then you change. But once you enter the production stage, you should not change any design or any other aspects of the game. So it's only during pre-production you have the leeway to change if you want with all the testing. But once you enter the production stage wherein you create your milestone sprints, and all the deadlines which you have, you cannot skip those. So once you are into production phase, you cannot change things because then it's never ending. Once you start with one small thing, okay, let me just change this. Then after a while, that might have some other effect, and you'll change something. You'll go, okay, let me just change something else. So then that becomes a never-ending process. So that's why you should never change things once it's set. So once it's in production phase, no changes.
So you try to avoid that domino effect at all costs.
Yeah.
So in the game production life cycle, right, what according to you is the most important part of it? Most important stage?
I would say the final 2-3 months. Let's say the production cycle is around 1.5 to 2 years.
Okay.
So for such a big development cycle, the final 2-3 months, which is the crunch months, that's where you have to be in focus. You should not get complacent, or you should not feel too tired and think like, when is this going to
That's
end?
so
Like it's been gone for
frustrating.
so long. So it tends to get monotonous. Just because it tends to get monotonous shouldn't mean that you become complacent and you start just doing stuff just for the heck of it. You should be concentrating till the end. So those final 2-3 months wherein you have to put in extra hours. That usually happens like in the gaming industry. Everyone knows that your crunch time is there. Like no matter how much you say, like we will try to plan, we'll try to avoid it, that doesn't happen. So you will have these things. So that's where you need to be like fully concentrated to make sure there are no bugs in the final stages wherein like you're putting 1.5 years of work, and then you screw it all up in the final 3 months. Is that's not acceptable. So you need to be.
So do you focus on keeping your team motivated more than 100%, especially in the final?
Yes, see, as a producer, if you look at externally, you might say like, okay, producer is up there, the head of the team, but actually internally he is the bottommost rung.
Okay.
So my job is to keep the team motivated, make sure everyone meets the deadline. If that means a programmer likes Diet Coke and he keeps going and getting Diet Coke, so I have to make sure that as soon as he's coding, go check, just talk to him a little bit and just shake the Diet Coke. If it's empty, go get another one and replace it. You don't want them to waste time like going and coming and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Weekend, like if there's a good movie, take them out for a movie, take them out for dinner. So you have to keep the team motivated, because the artists will do their job, the programmers will do their job, designers will do their job. So for me to make sure they do their job perfectly, I have to make sure they are in high spirits, literally and figuratively, and
True.
get the work done.
So leading on from what you just described, right, what according to you are some of the best practices to follow during the game production life cycle?
So what we do is like we make sure that everyone picks their own tasks. You don't assign tasks to anyone. They have to have the ownership of the game. They need to feel like it is their game which they are making it. They are not making it for a company. They are not making it for a producer or for any other stakeholders. They are the stakeholders. It's their game. Because once the game is released and you show it to your friend, they wouldn't care whether you're a programmer, artist, QA, nothing. For them, they just associate you with the game. And if it's bad, they'll be like, you made a bad game. Then you cannot say like, oh no, I was a designer, I didn't do programming and stuff like that. So other thing we make sure is like everyone should know the engine they're working on, because that saves time, that saves double work. Because if an artist works on Maya or Blender or Max, anything, creates a character, does some animations in it and says the task is done, gives it to a programmer exports it into the engine and then finds something wrong with it, he goes back to the artist who has to stop what he's doing, fix it and then give it back. So that just wastes everyone's time. So you make sure that everyone knows how to export their stuff into the engine and make sure everything works fine before you say a task is done. And other thing which we do is like we assign a QA guy to a programmer from the initial stages itself. Even though there is dedicated QA testing time, we make sure that there are not many bugs when it comes to that stage. So if you take an action game and you have coded jumping aspect of it, so you coded jumping and then you give it to a QA guy and tell him like, just jump around the map, make sure it doesn't fall out of the map. And that time you work on other aspects, and then once that is done, he comes back saying, okay, there are these defects, you need to fix this. So you give him like, okay, now the shooting aspect is done, just go start firing everywhere, make sure everything is fine. There are no crashes or anything.
So it's like at every stage.
At every stage. So that way when it comes to QA, actual QA stage, there are not many showstoppers which you will find. And that helps because it's faster.
reduce the duplication of work. You don't
Eh,
have to come back and again
Correct.
there is a bug that you find at the end of it.
Yeah.
Then yeah. So for someone who's has a career in game QA, why do you think there are professional game QA who progress towards game production?
I would say it's mostly due to the exposure of games when you have in QA. So you have so many different genres of games. So when when you're a programmer or artist, your project might last for 6 months to 1 year, maybe 2 years, sometimes even longer, and then you're stuck. You're just doing one aspect of it. But when you're doing QA, you shift projects, and there are so many different genres. And QA guys tend to be gamers all the time, so they're exposed to so many games. They're exposed to what quality is required, and all these things help in production because you need to make sure the game you are developing is really good. Now, because you're exposed to so many games and so many different genres of games, that would help in deciding how your game would shape up. You wouldn't take any mediocre quality and say this is done. You would have the knowledge to say, no, this game is similar to the other game which is released, and look at the quality there. Now they have done it, so we should be able to match that quality.
Fair enough. That was super insightful, Gautam. Thank you for that. But before I let you go, I have a few rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
So, what's your favorite gaming platform?
I would say the PC.
The PC.
Yeah.
Old school.
Old school. I mean, consoles, Xbox is not that great, but PS5 is amazing. Thank you, Sony. So,
Yeah. If PlayStation or Nintendo?
PlayStation. Any day. Any day.
Okay. So, what's the best compliment you've ever gotten?
I don't know, man. I let the audience decide. You can comment.
Fair enough. So, generally, how does your morning routine look like?
Mornings are usually late. I mean, I haven't seen the sunrise for ages now, so it's already mid-afternoon by the time I wake up, and then I'm like, uh-oh, it's afternoon. Get ready and start working. Immediately. That's it.
So, for you, is gaming more of a hobby or that you made your
I
job?
see. Yes, it was my passion, and been gaming since I was like 5 or 6. And to get into gaming as a profession, that's like a dream job. And yeah, so I usually keep like
a gamer's dream.
Yeah, I mean, if it's something you're passionate about, if you get to work on that, then it's brilliant.
So finally, one last question: which role do you prefer, a hero or a villain?
Oh, villain, man.
Villain. Thank you, Gautam. That was really insightful. A pleasure having you here.
Thanks, Abhi.
Thank you. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you guys found that insightful as well.